So when the president says now that he held up security assistance because he was concerned about rooting out corruption in Ukraine, that concern was not expressed in the 2 phone conversations that he had with President Zelensky earlier this year. Is that right?
Correct.
Did you discuss at all, at any point, their concerns about the hold on security assistance?
To the best of my recollection, in the August timeframe, the Ukrainian embassy started to become aware of the hold on security assistance, and they were asking if I had any comment on that or if I could substantiate that.
And that was before it became public, is that right?
Yes.
So, Mike, hearsay, blown to bits. The Ukrainians not knowing it was held up, blown to bits. About 2 or 3 other stupid Republican defenses blown to bits, all because Donald Trump won't let them just say what everybody knows.
Well, that's,
he did it.
The truth.
That's the amazing thing in terms of Republican strategy or lack of strategy. They have all read the deposition that Vindman provided nearly 3 weeks ago. To allow him to sit there, rather than saying, Colonel Vindman, name, rank, and serial number, thank you for your service. Did you listen to the phone call on the 25th? Yes, I did. Thank you for coming. And get him off instead of spending hours attacking him was incredible.
Yeah, and Ben Wittes, talk about those clips we just showed, how it really did just push aside all of the Republicans' defense, including Lindsey Graham's very creative interpretation of the hearsay evidence rule. And if you can, give us just a 30,000-foot look down at these hearings over the past 2 weeks. What have we learned?
Right. So what we've learned in the broadest sense is that the worst understanding of the president's conduct is the most accurate, which is that he conditioned military aid and a White House meeting for the new president of Ukraine on the delivery of specific political favors to himself, not to the United States. And I think all of that is pretty unambiguously clear at this point. What is missing from the picture, to a certain limited degree, is how much of this was done by Gordon Sondland and the people around the president, and how much of it was done by the president himself. We know that some of it was done by the president himself because we have the text of the phone call, which so upset Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. But I do think that this puts a real premium on Mr. Sondland's testimony today, because Sondland is the person who has repeated contacts with the president himself over this period and represents himself, including to State Department officials who will testify later in the week, as, you know, acting on the president's behalf. And so I think the thing to watch for today that I will be really curious about is to what extent, A, does Sondland revise previous testimony again? But secondly, to what extent are Democrats able to get him to talk about his conversations with the president? And to what extent, when he conveys this insistence on the deliverables that are these investigations, to what extent is he conveying something that Trump himself demanded clearly? In other words, does he bring this to the door and the conduct specifically of Trump himself?
You know, Devin Nunes gives us a tell at the beginning of every hearing about how much he and the Republicans have on these witnesses. Yesterday, he told us right from the outset he had nothing. Right. Because his opening statement was an attack on the media, which is fine. We get attacked all the time. But it had nothing to do with any of the evidence that he knew was about to be presented. Then in his questioning, Devin Nunes went to conspiracy theories about Ukraine actually being the country that meddled in the 2016 election. Colonel Vindman shot those down immediately. And then he spent the rest of his time trying to get Colonel Vindman to say out loud the whistleblower's name. Colonel Vindman would not do that. Chairman Schiff intervened and wouldn't allow that line of questioning. But the entire argument that you heard from the ranking member yesterday had nothing to do with the evidence that was being presented.
I got to say, I mean, you know, I don't know if you know it or not, I was in Congress, and
Really?
Newt was a speaker. I got to say, if a Republican ranking member of the Intel Committee, like, did half or what, even threw any conspiracy theory out in a hearing like this, Newt would yank them off in a second. Anybody would.
There are lines.
Like it is staggering that nobody is at home. Nobody, there is no adult. I mean, there hasn't been one in a very long time, but it's just mind-boggling. And David Ignatius, the Intel Committee, used to be, along with the Ethics Committee, those used to be the two committees that were above partisan fray. After 9/11, there were a lot of ugly things that had to be sorted through after 9/11. A lot of really rancorous debates about how we were going to track down suspected terrorists and what we were going to do once we caught them. And yet, there they were, the Intel Committee, the Gang of Eight, the White House. They sat there, they worked on it together. Nancy Pelosi, from Nancy Pelosi to Dick Cheney to you name it, like everybody sat through it, worked together, and it was beyond reproach, above politics.
Joe, the Intelligence Committee in the House is a snapshot of how our politics has gotten broken. That committee was very divided once upon a time, and it got a new chairman in Republican Mike Rogers, who we've all seen on television, and a Democratic ranking member, Dutch Ruppersberger, the tough old prosecutor from Maryland. And the two of them made a deal. And the deal was, I've got your back. We are going to put this committee back together. And that committee, which used to see intense, bitter feuds, could never pass appropriations or authorization legislation, suddenly began to work. That's the committee that Devin Nunes, when he became chairman, broke all over again. We see the partisanship, we see the bitterness. If it's not partisan enough, they'll pull in Jim Jordan to make it even nastier. But it's really a tragedy when you think about where it's been and how it's changed to be a mirror of all of the dysfunction of our Washington situation. You know, I think the thing we have to hope for most is this impeachment process will be done so carefully with such clear evidence that people can understand that it begins to pull people back together towards the idea, yeah, the president did something wrong here. We have to take it seriously. Yeah. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going further toward the waterfall.
Well, you know, people talk about the time. It's a time we're in. It's a time. No, it's not. It's lack of character among people on these committees. Just a lack of character and a lack of love of country that they put their political party above their country. A perfect exhibit, what happens in the United States Senate. Guess what? Chairman Burr and the ranking member from Virginia, they work together very well. And coordinate their messages. And actually, when they talk in a press conference, you're like, oh, wait a second. They're doing the business of the United States of America and not their own political party.
Wow. In the 13 years I've worked with you, I have never heard you accuse someone of not loving their country. And in fact, you're very careful with those words.
Did I say they are acting like they didn't love their country? I can say this. When they're on the Intel Committee, they are putting their party above their country. It's plainly obvious. And if you want to see somebody that puts their country first, look what the Democrats and Republicans do in the Senate.
Benjamin Wittes, thank you very much for being on.